So, quick explanation on something that's mentioned in this episode is David Wachs, my guest, talks about how I worked with Donald Trump. And so, backstory on that is that I did do 2 seasons of a TV show called The Celebrity Apprentice, and I worked in the production crew. So, just so you know, that's what he's referencing there. Anyway, today on the podcast, we have David Wachs, and he is the founder and CEO of a company called Handwritten. Prior to that, if you have a cell phone, you've probably interacted with this company before called Sell It. And he talks about the mistake that cost him millions of dollars in taxes when he sold the company. So it's a tip that you do not want to miss. Enjoy the episode. David Wachs, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on, Sarah. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So before we jump into what your current company is doing, I'm really excited to learn about what you were doing previously with Sell It and how you built and scaled and sold that company prior to starting Handwritten.
So I kind of fell into Sell It. So Sell It, I was working. It's funny. I have a 9-year-old boy, and he just asked me if I had any stories of grit. And this was the story of grit because I was living in San Diego. In the 4 months I was living there, I was working for a venture capital firm. I got fired from the job without cause. I got evicted from my apartment without cause, and I can go into all those stories. I got in a car accident, which was my fault, and it flooded continuously, all within 4 months. So I kind of dropped everything. I had no job, had a busted up car, had no place to live because I was evicted. And I moved back to where I grew up, Scottsdale, Arizona, and I started out of desperation, a company. I thought, actually, it was my dad's idea. I met with him with my head between my legs. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no job. I have no car. I have no, and he
This
said,
sounds like a Dumb and Dumber thing. My
yeah,
pets' heads are falling off.
it was ridiculous. So anyway, he said, well, why don't you do something with BlackBerries and barcodes for information on real estate? Because he was a realtor at the time, and this was back in '04, and he said he could never get information on houses when he'd drive by. Like, there was no Zillow yet. There'd be a flyer box, but it was empty. So I said, well, I don't know about Blackberries and barcodes, but how about text messaging? So Sell It started by allowing you'd see a house for sale, and then there was a little sign below it. It would say text house 5 to 30364 for info on this house. And you text in, and then you get info on the house. You get a few pictures. To tell you what the time was, you get the option to type in your fax number to have more information faxed to you. And then the realtor would get the lead. I quickly pivoted out of that vertical. And I got into just more general texting. I thought, gee, there might be use cases for this with restaurants and bars. And what happened was I created this restaurant bar thing called Coupon Zap. And before I knew it, somebody called me about Coupon Zap, but their use case was actually they were Marie Claire magazine, and they wanted to allow people to text in on the pages of Marie Claire to get more information and enter into a contest, which was basically house for sale. So between the two of them, I was able to kind of get off unemployment and grow House for Sale and Coupons app into something which became something called Sell It Studio. And our clients, without getting into it, within 10 years, we had Abercrombie and Fitch and Toys R Us and Sam's Club, Office Max, Blue Man Group, Cirque du Soleil. And we were...
Wow, that's quite a roster.
Yeah, we were a rather large text messaging platform. Just for Abercrombie alone, we were sending a million texts a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but and it was all opt-in. It wasn't spam. Like, it wasn't like we weren't just hitting numbers. You'd have to ask to join and all that stuff. But I was getting very nervous about text messaging laws. Even though we were opt-in, I was nervous people would say they weren't opted in, which happened a few times. Then you get a crazy lawsuit and all this stuff. And I also thought people were getting fatigued by text messages. So I sold that company and had to work for them for 2 years. And then after that, I thought, gee, what could I do? And I actually wanted to send my employees of that company and my customers, my clients, something special to thank them for being with me all the time. So I sent them handwritten notes, and quickly my hand got tired and I ran out of stamps and all the things. And I said, gee, there has to be a better way. So that's how I started Handwritten. And handwritten was designed to make sending handwritten notes as easy or easier than sending an email. And it was really designed for me. I thought it would be cool to be able to include business cards or gift cards to Starbucks and all that type of stuff. So that's the platform we created. And that was back in 2016. 2016. I'm losing my 2014. I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna say, I think I read 2014,
2014.
but
I'm
yeah.
losing my dates here. It was back in 2014. I've been doing this 12 years, and we've grown that to now being the largest automated handwritten note company in the world. We use 200 robots that we build. They're slightly bigger than like a laser printer, and they hold a real pen. It's a Pilot G2 ballpoint pen, and we write out about 30,000 handwritten notes a day. So a much smaller volume than the text messages, but it's a different type of thing entirely. And that's kind of where we're at. So, and we do this for everything from small businesses, lots of small businesses, lots of little Shopify stores, that type of thing, all the way up to department store chains and nationwide nonprofits.
Right, I think there's such a need for it, and before we jump into, like, all the benefits of what a handwritten note does for the client or the customer,
Yeah.
I'm curious, having sold a company prior, how did you approach starting handwritten, knowing that what you went through with selling that company? Did you start it with the end goal being to sell it? Did you structure it differently? What are some of the things you learned from the first company?
Not as much as you'd think. It's kind of been a blur. I Yes, I do want to one day sell handwritten. Right now, we're not there yet. I didn't realize the complex. You don't know what you don't know, and the complexity of what we've built here is bonkers. And I can get into that, but like, oh, we're just sending handwritten notes, no big deal, right? Well, that's kind of the fact when you're doing like 100 notes a day. But as soon as you start scaling, it gets super complicated because you're dealing with actual things, not, and there, it's kind of like a river of notes. It's like keeping track of toothpicks. There's so many of them and they're all, so, it's a very different problem than Sell It, where it was fully digital. So, it's a much harder business in that regard. Thankfully, I used to kind of curse the business because there's all this CapEx and everything else. But thankfully, we have all that CapEx now because otherwise businesses like Sell It could potentially be vibe coded due to AI, and handwritten because of all the physical technology. We have a bit of a moat around us now. So that's good. But one of the things I did different, well, there's two things I've done differently. And one of them is very important. And I preach it and scream it from the rooftops, and nobody listens to me. Uh, One of them, the less important one, is I did a real separation of concerns with handwritten versus Sell It on the technical side. So, what do I mean by separation of concerns? When I was the guy that wrote years of bad code for Sell It. Like I wrote all the code that ran the texting and websites and all that stuff. With handwritten, fortunately, I didn't have to do that. I hired people. But I also wanted to make sure they didn't make the same mistakes I did, meaning when I wrote the websites, it was very hard to take that and apply that logic to put on Zapier, or basically to create an API layer, if you're familiar with Zapier, or to tie into Shopify. It would have been hard.
Mhm.
All the code was kind of spaghetti. Um,
Okay.
so with handwritten, I said, I really want to separate the concerns. So the way I did that was I said, let's come out with an iPhone app first, because when you create a phone app, all the logic sits far away on the server, and the phone app is the first API user. So I don't want to bore your listeners with techie stuff. So that was the first one. I did a real separation of concerns so that the code could scale, because I said I want to be as easy or easier than sending an email. And what I mean by
Mhm.
that is I want to be integrated freaking everywhere. I want to be in your HubSpot. I want to be in your Salesforce. I want to be in your Shopify. I want to be in your donor platform. I want to be on your phone. I want to be in all these places. I don't want you to have to come to handwritten.com to send a note. So it was very important to create that great API layer. And that's number one. number two, and everybody needs to drop what they're doing and get out a pen. You want to look up what's called QSBS, or Qualified Small Business Stock, also called Section 1202 of the tax code. And I know your listeners are now high fiving each other, saying, yes, tax code talk. But what this is,
Always exciting to talk taxes.
super, yeah, I've gone from API layer to tax code, but this is really important, and this applies to any business that wants to sell. What qualified small business stock is, and I did not know about this with Sell It, and I could have saved millions of dollars in taxes, millions, by doing this. And what you do and this really only applies if you're kind of, you have a small ownership group, like, you own everything, or you talk to your tax accountant, your tax lawyer, and your accountant. Your mileage may vary, but what you do is you get your company valued wherever you are now. You get your company valued by an independent valuer. They say the company's worth, let's say it's worth 5 million bucks. Great. You then convert from an LLC, which I'm guessing most of you are, to a
Hmm.
C corp, not an S corp. Luckily, the tax ramifications of converting to a C corp aren't as bad as they used to be, thanks to your old friend, who you were on a TV show with, Donald Trump. So the tax code is a little better now. It was okay when I ran Sell It. It's really good now. So now is a good time to do it. So you convert to a C corp. You then have to hold that company for 5 years and keep growing. Okay. After
Hmm.
the end of the 5 years, when you go to sell the company, the capital gains you will pay in most cases, well, it's up to you will pay the capital gains on your initial valuation, not where you are 5 years later, but where you were 5
Oh,
years ago. You'll pay capital gains on that, and then 10 times that will be cap gains free. So let's say 5 years ago it was a relatively small company. It was worth, let's not do five, let's do $2 million. We were worth $2 million. Great. I then work my pants off for 5 years plus, and now I'm worth $10 million. Well,
hmm.
instead of paying 30%, whatever, 25% of $10 million when I sell, which would be the long-term cap gains rate, give or take, I pay 25% of $2 million. And
You're blowing my mind right now. I've never heard this.
nobody is doing this. The people that do this,
Like,
those that are venture backed, because the VCs want to take advantage of the benefit. Or, the average person, the average small business, up to their eyeballs in QuickBooks and payroll and everything else, nobody clues them in, taps them on the shoulder and says, have you looked into the QSBS tax exemption? If you ever plan on selling, do it now. You have a minimum period of 5 years. Well, now, actually, thanks to your friend, I think you
I don't
can,
know if I would say friend, but we did work together.
thanks to DJT, you can actually get out a little earlier. I think you get some value if you sell 3 years later, um, but you get the full value after 5. So do it now, get that. But you also have to, and without getting into it too much, you have to kind of game the system. Like, you don't
Hmm.
want to do it when you're too early. If you're only worth 50,000 bucks, your total value, actually, it's the minimum of 10. I mean, 50,000 wouldn't do it, but you have to kind of game the system and figure out how much tax gains you really want to pay, because it's up to 10 times that is then tax free. So, pull out
Got
an
it.
Excel
Okay. So you
spreadsheet and
got to
figure it out.
finagle those numbers a little bit.
Correct.
I don't know how nobody's talking about this because small business owners are the people that need that.
Correct.
And
If you plan
that,
on selling. If you don't, the C Corp thing does kind of suck a little bit, because double
mhm.
taxation and all that stuff. But if you plan on selling and you know you're going to build your puppy to sell it, 100%.
Wow. So that's a huge lesson you learned in the first one that I'm sure you're going to take with you or have already with
Yeah,
handwritten.
we're a C Corp. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so that kind of leads into my one other question before we get more into the business of handwritten notes is if small business or business owners are planning on selling their company, what are some things that they should focus on now? So that was a great tip, but are there any other things of like ways to start structuring your business or things that they should be looking at to prep their company for sale?
Yeah. QSBS is the biggest. The other things you should do is, again, taxes. And I'm sorry for boring your listeners. You need to be on accrual cash basis. As you personally can look at your cash basis of your books, but you need to be on accrual and making sure your accrual numbers are correct. And it's can be easy or it can be hard. With my current company, Handwritten, we were doing a lot of prepaid discounts. So you want to get 10,000 notes with handwritten? Great, buy a 10,000 note package. The problem with that on an accrual basis, and then you'd have like 2 years to use it or 3 years to use it. The
Hmm.
problem with that on an accrual basis is it creates what's called a deferred revenue liability, which buyers hate. So, deferred revenue liability meaning I can't call that 10,000 cards you just bought revenue until you actually use the cards. So now I'm sitting on a debt that I owe you, the client. So you really have to think about that. Talk to your accountant about accrual. That's the other thing. And also just really, make sure you have very buttoned up books. Keep your books extremely clean, which I'm sure most of you do, because otherwise you'll have a huge mess to clean up. If you have any sort of credit system where people buy something and they get credits, really take a good look at it and make sure you understand how it works because it can be a disaster.
Yeah, those are great tips. And while taxes aren't the most fun and exciting thing, it's a part of business and,
Yeah.
something that does need to be buttoned up. So, when you go to sell, you're not scrambling and looking like your books are all over the place.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say is make sure you have systems in place for everything. There's a great book came out years and years ago called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber.
I love that book.
It's a great book. But that's a great book. And then Gino Wickman's Traction.
Ooh, I
Uh,
don't know that one.
he created this book called Traction, and then he turned Traction into a system that businesses implement called EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System. And it's a great way to kind of run weekly meetings with your team and that type of thing. But it's also a great way to make sure that your team does everything and you don't do everything. And, when you sell your company, you don't want to be the, the pinch point, the single point of failure in the company, meaning when you sell your company, you're probably going to vominos and the business buyer is going to know that. So they're going to want to make sure that everybody else is trained up and competent and you have a good team in place, basically.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's
that makes sense.
just have the systems in place, have the SOPs documented, really work on that.
Right. And make yourself as, attractive as possible to these buyers then when they knock on your door.
Correct.
So switching gears, so now you start handwritten. Was that like starting a company from the ground up, or do you feel like you had a head start because of the previous company?
It was from the ground up. It wasn't like, well, I've worked in venture capital twice and people come in with big business plans and all that. And those are probably the right way to do a business if you don't spend years doing the business plan because some people get analysis paralysis.
Hmm.
Um, I just jumped in. The first time it was out of desperation. The second time I was like, oh, this is a good idea. And I figured I'd do it
This
without,
will be fun.
and then I got a couple of handwriting machines and they ran on my kitchen counter. Um, so no, it wasn't, the second time was as much of a startup as the first. I've never taken any funding. The first time my father uh, put some money in to sell it and it was the best investment he ever made. Handwritten has been 100% me. And for the most part, it's grown organically. Um, I mean, it has grown organically. I'm the only money, I haven't had to put in a lot of money.
Nice. Okay. So now I want to switch gears into the purpose of handwritten and what the benefits are. So I heard a line that you said it was like the most underutilized inbox is the one at the end of your driveway.
Correct.
Would love to hear more about that because when you said that, I'm like, that's so spot on. I'll get like 5,000 emails. I don't get any personalized mail,
Yeah.
like nothing.
Yeah, you probably get maybe one a month. I think the average consumer gets between 1 and 3 handwritten letters a month, but not from businesses. And you can go to handwritten.com, handwrytten.com, and go to the resources tab, and you can download a research paper we did. We surveyed 2,000 consumers unrelated to handwritten, and they told us that they didn't get handwritten notes. So, anyway, let me just quickly take you and your listeners on a quick journey. Imagine for a second you're not Sarah Press, the podcaster, you're Sarah Press, the piano tuner. And piano tuners only need to go in homes once a year. So you tune somebody's piano, you go in their home, you tune their piano, you send them a handwritten note, and then you don't hear from them for a year. A year later, you get the call back to go tune the piano again. When you go in that home the second year, imagine your surprise when you approach the piano, and on top of the piano is that handwritten note of thanks you sent them. That is what we see here all the time. Not only did you send them the handwritten note and they open it and read it, they put it on display on their most prized possession, where the real estate on that item is typically limited to wedding photos and graduation announcements, right? Like,
Mhm.
this is personal space in the fancy room of the house. But your advertisement or your reinforce your billboard of your note that you send saying thank you is there for a year. And that's a true story. That's a piano tuner we have in Pennsylvania sees it all the time. And that's kind of why I pivoted. I was getting too many texts probably during this call. I probably received, or this podcast, I probably received 20. People are overwhelmed by text and email, and they're just deleting it as fast as possible without reading it. And that was the case 12 years ago when I started handwritten. It's certainly way more the case now. Um, and at the same time, the amount of handwritten notes you get is decreasing. And because of that, they're more and more valuable and they feel more personal. And we're also living in a time where we're completely sensory deprived. I grew up with
Mhm.
photo albums and CD collections, and those are both gone, right? So people love it when they get to use their sense of touch.
Right. Gary Vee was just talking about how the next trend is going to be going back to like the good old days, like,
Yeah.
the early 1900s where people got together in person and the handwritten things and in person communication and experience versus this whole digital world. And so this kind of plays right into that. I've even noticed like when I get mail and if it looks like my name was handwritten, I'll open it.
Yeah.
Way more than if it looks like it's just, they sent out a million mass produced
Yeah.
situation, so
If people ask, they say, well, we only have enough money to handwrite the note or the envelope. What would you do? I'd say, well, I'd do the envelope because that's going to get you inside to read the note. And handwritten envelopes have a 300% higher open rate than print envelopes. But you don't want to disappoint them and tick them off when they open it and they find some flyer in there either. So,
every time I'm, like, excited, I'm like, "Oh, what is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah."
yeah, it's just some realtor postcard that was thrown in a handwritten envelope. Yeah.
Right.
So that's what we do is we print. We have 3 digital presses where we print your handwritten your stationery first. So you go on our website, you design your beautiful piece of stationery. We then print that out on thick, toothy stock, so it's like a nice greeting card. It's all full bleed, so it looks like you went into a Hallmark store or whatever. And then we feed that into one of our 200 robots that writes out the note in pen, in one of 35 different handwriting styles, or you design your own if you want to do that. And the whole thing looks authentic. And it's funny, I go to these marketing trade shows and I say, yeah, we do handwritten notes. And people say, well, I would never open that. So then I pull out one of ours and I say, oh, you wouldn't open, and I don't have the envelope. Actually, I do have the envelope. I say, you wouldn't open this? And they say, oh, of course I'd open that. So that joke is like, you'd open it. So,
Oh, for sure. I
yeah,
didn't realize it's actual pen that you're
oh, yeah.
using.
Yeah, it's actual pen. So,
Wow, that looks totally legit, like a very well handwritten note. Yeah, there's something so powerful about the automation factor of it. Like, even with this podcast, when I first started, I was doing handwritten thank you notes to every guest that was coming on. And in theory, that was great. And I was going to continue to do that every single time. And guess what has fallen off the last couple weeks?
Yeah.
Is
That's
is like actually doing it.
yeah, and we automate the logistics. We do not automate the intent. The fact that you just try to do something different, you stand out in a different way, even if they realize it's written by a robot, which I don't think they will, and most 99% of people probably wouldn't. But even if they do, at least you did something different and you tried to send something physical. I'd say these days that's enough. But yeah, we automate the logistics. We don't automate the intent.
So do you find that so is it more of like one-offs of like you said, the celebrities are probably sending things to whatever brands they're working with and such.
Yeah.
Have you seen it in industries where, like in the real estate world, they say like handwritten, send out those postcards, any handwritten, like do you
Yeah.
find, is there times where companies do bulk messaging or is it very personalized?
Well, even if it's bulk, we still personalize it. So let's say you're doing a prospecting campaign, and this could get prospecting with handwritten notes is expensive, just for no other reason than the stamp on our handwritten notes is a stickered, either a forever stamp, which is 78 cents right now, just for the stamp. So you're paying a lot just in postage. So prospecting can get expensive. That said, if you're doing real estate where it's a high margin item, and these days with the cost of real estate, you can make $100,000 selling a home. Maybe it's worth it. And with that, yeah, every single note. So you could circle an area on a map using our system, send everybody a handwritten note, and they'd all say, "Dear Sarah, dear Jim," and something like that. The other way to do it is bulk upload a spreadsheet, and you can have the template in that spreadsheet dynamically customized. So, dear Sarah, I saw you purchased the freeze dried carrot sticks, whatever. We really think you'd like the um, spiced broccoli snack or whatever. You can set up these chains that are actually very, very easy to do, but allow you to personalize at scale. We work with a luxury brand where whether you're online and buy their product from Italy and have it sent to you, or you go into one of their stores throughout North America, you'll receive a handwritten note back. If you go into a store in Arizona or the Scottsdale Fashion Square Mall or whatever, the note will say it came from Susie Q, your rep at the Scottsdale Fashion Square, versus, if you went to a store in Montreal, it would have Jean Marie and their store name, that type of thing. So the notes are fully customized at scale so that it perfectly applies.
Yeah, I notice even when I get a package from like a smaller boutique and they handwrite in there and your name's in there, like, Sarah, thank you so much for purchasing from our small business. It means so much to us.
Yeah.
I like that really psychologically, that goes a long way. Like you're probably more likely to want to support that business and that person because you feel that personal touch and connection.
100%. And these days with AI, every email you get, I mean, we used to, um, I think we used to get like 130. When I started handwritten, I did the back analysis to make a deck about it. And it's like the average office worker gets 134 emails a day. Man, I would love to get only 134 emails a day now, right? Like the flood of emails you get thanks to AI and automation is huge. So, you just discount everything. The most personalized email in the world, you just assume was automated. So, and you're spending so much time just reading the first sentence that appears as the preview in your Outlook or whatever, you don't even read the rest. But a handwritten note, I mean, they get open and they get read. And I'm not saying handwritten with a Y, I'm saying, handwritten with an I and a Y, you know. So just sit down and write out handwritten notes. And then when you can't do it anymore, find a company like Handwritten to do it for you.
Yeah, I love that. So we're running out of time. We're running out of time, but what I love to leave my listeners with is what would be that one thing that you would tell small business owners to implement today that can improve their lives or their business?
Well, I would say, look, if you haven't read E-Myth or Traction, check them out. I think EOS, the entrepreneur operating system, has been um, very influential to us. And it's just really kind of helped us get on a cadence of meetings at the company and get everybody on the same page. It's a pretty easy read of a book, too. So, Traction by Gino Wickman. And then, honestly, QSBS, don't make the mistakes I made.
That's those are always the great tips. Well, thank you so much. If people want to find your company or, reach out to you, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, come to handwritten.com, handwrytten.com. You can click business at the top and request free samples. That's always a great way. Or you could just book a meeting and we'll meet with you and discuss how this works for you. Or you can find me on Instagram if you want to see a lot of videos of the robots writing out cards. DBWACHS on Instagram.
Awesome. And I'm going to put these in the show notes as well so people can go there and check you out.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks for listening to Nothing Small About Business. Make sure you follow the show so you don't miss the value in upcoming episodes. Share this with someone who's growing and connect on socials for more.